Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to a very special DM radio episode. Yours truly, Eric Kavanaugh, here with several rock star experts of the data industry. Folks, I'm so excited to have Mark Madsen back from Third Nature. He'll be joining Michael Kowalczyk from Matterbeam and Josh Pendergrass from Syncly. And folks, we're going to talk about a very, very interesting topic today. Don't wait for the warehouse. Matterbeam came up with a very interesting approach to creating an intermediate data format that enables last mile transformations to create data products on demand. So instead of building this huge honking data warehouse and then building on top of that, no, they use what are called write ahead logs. So we'll get into the details here. It's quite a fascinating concept that every system uses, like an ERP database. They always have a write ahead log just in case the system crashes. And these folks figured out how to capture all that, put it into an append only log, and then they have a time machine that goes back and lets you replay whatever you need on demand. So I heard that. I was like, well, that is freaking cool. So without any further ado, Michael Kowalczyk, take it away. Tell us all about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric, for that intro. Yeah, thought I'd talk a little bit about Matterbeam first with the slides. I love this statement from Dan O'Reilly. It's actually from 2013. Data's like teenage sex. Everyone talks about it. Nobody really knows how to do it. Everyone thinks everyone else is doing it, so everyone claims they are doing it. And this has been sort of the common thread through data for a long time, right? We've been struggling with the same list of data challenges again for a long, long time. I had created this list on my own, and on a lark, I typed it into ChatGPT. I was like, "What are the biggest problems with data today?" And it basically spit this list back out at me. And then I was like, "What about the biggest problems in 2015?" And it spit this list out at me again, right? Silos, bad data, all these things. Um, and a lot of times, people think, "Oh, someone else must have figured this out," but everyone has these problems. Like when we talk to customers, I always ask, like, how is it to try and actually use data in your company? And 99 out of 100 times you get the answer. It's awful. It's a mess. It's terrible. I hate it. It's not just you. And AI, I think, is making this worse. So we've been chasing the one system to rule them all for a long time. In 1985, the data warehouse was going to solve everything. And then 2005, like, no, wait, data lake, that's the way to go. And then 2015, it's like, well, no, no, we actually still need the warehouse and the lake. You need to do both. And now in 2025, it's like, have you heard about lake houses? It's like we're bringing these things together. And 40 years, the same problem. And deep down, you know what's coming. There's going to be another platform, right? Another migration, another promise that this time, no, this time, it's going to be different. And it's not. It's not going to be different. Um, every company has a graveyard of not failed projects, but of projects that have never even gotten the chance to fail. There's these projects that died waiting for data access. They're just waiting for the data. Ideas atrophied, new approaches were abandoned, new product initiatives were shelved. You say real time and you get kind of like that hollowed out, defeated laughter when you say real time. I was looking at a backlog of data requests at a company I was at one point, and the average age of the data requests in there was 5 months, and the oldest one in there was 3 years for a CSV file. Right? This is insane, right? We've normalized this. You talk to, I talk to potential customers, and some of them say, "Oh, we've solved data," and I say, "Oh, so you deliver all the data requests, that come in?" "Oh no, I triage 90% of them." Right. And we've normalized this. This is insane. We built the 7-layer dip from hell. Disclosure, I've built this. I'm sure a bunch of people on this webinar have built this. Layers of systems, some with their own teams, some with their own backlogs, each with its own version of no. A simple question, can I get customer data grouped differently, geographically differently? Touches 4 teams and 3 systems and 2 quarters, and someone has a mental breakdown. And the worst part is that, these people, I've managed these people, they're working incredibly hard, right? And they're incredibly smart. And only a few use cases actually really make it through this layer hell, right? It's usually BI use cases. It's usually for the exec team. It's usually last quarter's requests. That's kind of the horror of it. Um, as an industry, we've gotten pretty good at automating moving data from A to B, basically in a pipeline. But what if the way we build pipelines themselves is the problem? Not bad pipelines, not slow pipelines, but like the entire concept. Because every pipeline is a set of choices. Every pipeline is a set of predictions. It's a bet that this exact transformation, this set of use cases, this exact shape, this exact destination system is what you need and potentially what you need forever. But like, when was the last time your requirements stayed stable for a month or even a week? Like, so what if we just stop building pipelines? So Matterbeam is a platform that's all about simplifying data integration to really enable companies to use their data, to actually use their data, to use it in minutes and not months. We have some interesting spins on it. I'll go into it. But one of the big key insights is this idea of the tyranny of the data pipeline, right? It is the fundamental building block of all of our data infrastructure. If you talk to anyone, it's like we've got our ML pipelines and our BI pipelines and our whatever pipelines. Um, and it's a core assumption that's rooted in a lot of conceptual inertia, but inside these pipelines are a lot of baked in assumptions. Single purpose, one way, single destination, usually batch extract. And it's not how we use data today. Um, so what do we do that's different? How do we sort of get out of this model? What we do is we deconstruct the traditional idea of a pipeline and we take, what we call ETL or ELT or whatever, however you want to shuffle the letters, um, and we break them into their constituent parts. And so you can do something in Matterbeam, which is we call it collect because it's slightly different, where you can collect data in isolation. You don't need a use case, and we store it in an immutable log, like Eric mentioned. We store it in this immutable log. Why do we do that? Then you can take what we call emit, which is the secondary piece. You can replay that log and emit it. But this isn't a synchronous operation, right? You could emit it to a target, you could pause a target, you could restart the target, you can control, how it goes. If you do both of these things, you've built a pipeline, right? But even with this, there's sort of interesting characteristics from it because you can control the sides independently. You can pause the source, or more importantly, you can pause a destination. You can restart it. You can throw away a destination table and rebuild it all without stopping collecting data. So that by itself is pretty powerful. But the real payoff is that once you have this data in this immutable log that's sort of source aligned, you have an infinite number of possibilities of what you can do with the data because it's stored in this abstract shape to make it easy to reuse the same data. It starts to unlock things like, I know there's people have said it for a long time, but self-service and simpler migrations and experimentation and the ability to react to change. Um, Once you deconstruct pipelines in this way, you can start to reimagine your data infrastructure. Just these simple things and rearranging them in certain ways allows you to rethink things. So moving from a rat's nest of point-to-point connections where the complexity and the overhead really grows geometrically because it's this point-to-point network effectively, you can move to a hub and spoke. And this is where we are. This is Matterbeam. It starts out like a pipeline, but underneath it's a rejection of the assumptions in sort of the pipeline model. Your data sources connect once. Your destinations, Snowflakes, Databricks, that weird MongoDB database that Jim in marketing, refuses to let go of. They become equal citizens, right? You need data shape for AI? Click, you got it. Shape for an executive dashboard? Click, you got that. Shape for something you haven't even thought of yet, right? Some use case that hasn't even arrived yet. It's already possible. Uh, because we store everything immutably, one of the reasons we do that is because now time is on your side. Time becomes flexible. You want to reprocess last year's data with a new customer segmentation model. The answer is yes. The schema changed 6 months ago, but we need historical consistency. The answer is yes. Can we see what the data looked like before we did this migration? The answer is yes, right? It's not just time travel. It's something more profound, right? It's choosing when to make your choices, the decisions about what your data is. You're not forced to make those trade-offs up front. You can do it when the use case arises. Um, so now you have a superpower. This is the thing that Eric keyed in on when we were talking earlier. You have a superpower. You can now create data products on demand effectively. You collect now, and then you can transform, do a late transform, and emit later again and again and again into the shape you need, the moment you need, into the system you need. And you can do that as those use cases arise. Uh, Matterbeam starts out very similar to an existing sort of ETL or pipeline tool. We move data from A to B, but that's where other tools stop and we start, right? We move that data, but because we now have this intermediate, we have all these other capabilities that we unlock. So we work with your existing infrastructure. A lot of people say, what does this replace? It kind of replaces aspects of what you're doing with other systems, but it's really something new. We work with your existing infrastructure. You can start small. You can start with one use case. We do things a little bit differently. I think we're tackling some really big, deep problems that have plagued the industry for decades. And I know there's a ton of cynicism because I'm sure this audience and anyone listening has heard these claims before, right? Democratized data access, the ability to use your data when you want. So I'm super happy that Josh has actually agreed to join us on this panel because Josh is the VP of Engineering at Broadlume, which is a Syncly company. Um, Broadlume is one of our earliest customers, actually, and he could talk a little bit about their experiences with Matterbeam. Broadlume's a technology company that specializes in marketing and management for a bunch of these industries. And I will actually have one quick thing. When I first talked to Josh and I was sort of explaining this, I was like, well, what kind of systems do you need to connect to? And his refrain was like, well, I have one of everything. I have one of every system. And I think that's pretty common. So I'll hand it off to Josh.
Yeah, it's true. At that point in time when Mike came and talked to me, I had one flavor of every type of database we'd grown by acquisitions. And so I said, I've got them all. And I remember they said, well, give us the thing that's troubling you the most right now. And I had a Cobalt legacy application that had data we need to pull out and put into a database so that we could actually report on it. And so I gave them that. That was the first thing I gave them. And, I remember Mike talking about the immutable log, and I didn't really get it at first because I was like, that's great, but I needed to do this. And so I don't really care about that. And then they went through with that project, and then something happened where I had an engineer actually come and say, "Hey, we got a request to do this one thing, and normally it would take like 3 weeks, but I just did it yesterday in an hour with Matterbeam because we already had the data in there." And that's when the light bulb really like went off for me on how this is very different. So as we got going with Matterbeam, we found that things were much easier and faster to implement. I mean, there was actually a project that we'd killed because it was going to take 2 years to really sync the data and get everything that was going. And after we
Jeez.
brought Matterbeam on, we decided to go move forward with it because that basically it did everything that we needed to build in those 2 years. It did all of that stuff already out of the box. And then I started to look at it and go, okay, I get the immutable log. I get why this is important because it started to change the way that we look at our data warehouse. Typically you have a data warehouse and you try to dump everything there because you may need to query that data later or build a report on it. And with Matterbeam, with the immutable log, it allowed us to capture that data and decide what we want to spit out. So we changed the way that we use our data warehouse, and now we are only spitting out basically finished reports, the data for finished reports, because it all lives in Matterbeam. And so the other thing about the immutable log is I don't have to be concerned that I dump every single thing there as long as Matterbeam has it. I can change the shape of that report. I can add a field from something that we were collecting but not emitting. And so it really is a game changer for us. I mean, it's just been a fantastic product that we've shaved so much time and engineering time off of things just by using it. And we've come up with new scenarios every day that, typically would take 6 months and we get them done in like 2 days. So,
Wow.
Yeah,
fantastic.
I don't know if you want to talk about the measure square use case that.
Yeah, yeah. So we were collecting this data already from this legacy system, and so we wanted to push to another system, legacy Measure Squared, and this was a paid service. We were talking about building it out, and literally we had it done in like 2 weeks instead of having to use any engineering time or anything like that. So it did everything it needed to do. We didn't need to build anything else. We didn't need to have other infrastructure. We didn't need to take up engineering resources to do it, and was a huge, it was already, we already were already collecting the data. So emitting it was just a matter of saying, okay, let's also push this here and let's shape it like this.
Hmm.
Yeah, I remember a conversation where one of the stakeholders at Broadlume at the time said, "We're interested in this if you can do it in less than 3 months." And we had to build a feature, and it took 2 weeks. And if we had had that feature before that, it would have taken 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So
That
we've
is
we've been
that
very
is that's outstanding stuff. Well, folks, let's move into our radio broadcast proper. We're going to post this separately, and we'll be right back.